Hey folks, I'm best-selling author of The Power Zero, David McKnight. In today's video, you'll see part 3 of my interview with podcast host Jesse Wright, in which we discuss the very best way to make sure that your retirement savings lasts as long as you do.
I saw a stat that says a 65-year-old married couple has an 18% chance that at least one of them in that relationship will make it to at least 95 years old, which means that nearly 20% of married couples, or 1 in 5, have a very real chance of outliving their money, would you say? Isn't that the biggest fear of retirees, is that they'll outlive their money? It seems like it's a pretty big chance if you're talking to at least 95 years old.
And most people will outlive their money because, number one, most people don't have enough money to fund a full retirement to begin with. A very low percentage of Americans have enough money saved to fully pay for their lifestyle through life expectancy. But the people who have saved enough are also still at risk of running out of money because they're not managing their money well in retirement. This is where I love to beat up a bit on Dave Ramsey, because you can't just get to retirement and just take some willy-nilly distribution rate in retirement. You can't say, okay, I got $1 million at day one of retirement. I'm going to take out 10%. Why? Oh, because I think that the market's going to return 10%. Well, the problem is that's sort of ignorant of what we call sequence of return risk, which means that you might average 10% in a year in retirement. It's not a linear 10%. In other words, the stock market is not depositing 10% into your investments January 1st every year. You might be up 30% one year. You might be down 12% the next. You might be up 18. You might be down 7. So it's going to average 10 or so, but you're not going to experience that each and every year. And the problem is, if you experience a series of negative returns in the first 10 years of retirement, and you're taking those 10% distribution rates or even 8%, it's like kicking your portfolio while it's down. It could actually send your portfolio into a death spiral from which it never recovers. You could run out of money 20 years faster. The name of the game is not just saving enough money by the time you retire, but it's distributing in a way such that it will last through your actuarial life expectancy. And that means either, number one, you got to do what I call the stock market approach, which is constrain yourself to a little itty bitty withdrawal rate. Most experts agree that is 4%, not 8%, which is what Dave Ramsey recommends. So you can either do that, or you can purchase what I talk about, tax-free income for life. I talk about a guaranteed lifetime income annuity, which basically means you hand a portion of your retirement savings over to an insurance company, and then in return, they give you a stream of income that you're guaranteed to never outlive. You're guaranteed to get a paycheck each and every month for the rest of your life. So long as you're on this side of the grass, you're going to have to keep finding ways to try to spend all that money, right? So annuities are the other way. It's actually much more cost effective to do an annuity. So for example, you have $1 million and you're living by the 4% rule. You can only take out $40,000 per year adjusted to keep up with inflation. If you use an annuity to purge longevity risk from your retirement picture, you hand $1 million over to an insurance company, they're going to give you in exchange for that upwards of $80,000 per year. So you could get twice as much money in exchange for that $1 million and have a 100% guarantee that it will last so long as you're on this side of the grass. Now, if you want to index that annuity to keep up with inflation, you can get annuities that do that as well. So you might not get quite the 80,000, maybe you only get 70,000. You can also get annuities that allow you to do what's called a piecemeal internal Roth conversion, where you can convert it little by little to a Roth IRA, so that guaranteed lifetime income comes to you in a tax-free way. That's sort of the central theme of tax-free income for life. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of different ways to sort of make sure your money lasts through life expectancy. I just think that some are better than others. Some are going to have a higher success rate than others.
What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see people make planning for their retirement?
Well, obviously the biggest one where I beat the drum the loudest is having all of your money accumulated in tax-deferred accounts by the time you retire. And historically, that wasn't such a big deal because the conventional thinking was you are going to be in a lower tax bracket in retirement, but all that's changed. And I've done recent videos on my own YouTube channel, Power Zero, where I quote 8 different experts, all of which are names you would recognize and your listeners would recognize, all of whom are saying there is no way the tax rates, even 10 years from now, are not going to be dramatically higher than they are today. So it's just, there are very, very few experts anymore that are arguing this point. And so if the people that are much smarter than you and me are predicting that tax rates are going to be higher down the road, then why are 95% of the cumulative retirement balances in our country still stuck in the tax deferred bucket? So that's probably the number one. And then I think the number two is really relying on the 4% rule in retirement, because the 4% rule is very, very difficult to live by. Because remember, the 4% rule only works if you can constrain yourself to 4% each and every year of retirement. If one year you take out 8%, and the next year you take out 7%, and then you take out 10%, and then you go back down to 4% again, then all of a sudden the likelihood that your money lasts through life expectancy starts to drop like a rock. If you can constrain yourself to 4% distributions adjusted for inflation in retirement, you have like an 86% chance that your money will last through life expectancy. Every time you take out more than 4%, then that success rate drops like a rock. And so it's just very, very, it's tough for people to live on 4% for 5 years, let alone a full 30-year retirement. So I think this idea that people can successfully live by the 4% rule is just, it's really, really tough. It takes a lot of discipline, and still it's not foolproof at the end.
Yeah, and I've read a lot of books that say that the 4% rule is really more like a 2.5 to 3% rule. Do you agree with that? Or it seems like 4% is being pretty optimistic.
Well, in tax-free income for life, I talk about how the 4% rule was historically, William Bengen, he was an MIT educated financial advisor. You don't see those very often. He's an MIT educated financial advisor. He was sort of alarmed that people were taking these willy-nilly distribution rates in retirement. So he decided to do some Monte Carlo simulations where he ran hundreds of thousands of different scenarios and various models, and basically said, hey, even 5%, you're going to run out of money half the time. So 4% was what he settled on. But back then he was using the stock market outlook was a little bit rosier. Bonds were higher back then. Now the outlook's not as rosy. Bonds up until recently weren't doing as hot. So a lot of people said that 3% is the new standard, but I'm not going to die on that hill. If somebody wants to say 4%, fine. But I think if we're talking about 6%, 8%, 10%, like what Dave Ramsey is saying, I think that's the kiss of death. And I just gave you an example. Dave Ramsey recently told a lady to take 10% distribution rates 15 years from now when she retires, and then to leave her investments 100% in stock. He doesn't believe in bonds. 100% stocks for her entire retirement, take 10% distributions per year. If you actually look at the modeling on that, she would run out of money 2/3 of the time. So that's a 66% fail rate if she follows that type of advice. So, these assumptions that we use in our retirement plans are important, and they have real life implications if we use the wrong assumptions.
Well, especially when using a Monte Carlo simulation, it's named after a casino.
Right.
That part.
Yeah, that's a little ironic, right? Okay, folks, that was part 3 of my interview with podcast host Jesse Wright. If you would like some help implementing a balanced, comprehensive approach to tax-free retirement that shields you from the impact of higher taxes, head on over to davemcknight.com and click on the Connect with an Advisor button. I'm happy to refer you to an advisor in the Power Zero network that has been trained, vetted, and qualified personally by me. If you're a financial professional and want to learn how to become a certified Power Zero advisor, head on over to powerzero.com and opt into my free video series. And if you have any comments or questions, feel free to drop them into the comment section below. I'll respond to every single one of them personally. And don't forget to click like, subscribe, and the bell so you never miss a video. This is David McKnight. I look forward to seeing you on the next video.